I want to talk about this book, Let's Talk About Loneliness by Simone Heng. I really enjoyed this book. Although it's a book about loneliness, it's really a book about connection, belonging, and love. So, where does loneliness come from? Simone shares her journey and she tells you where her loneliness came from in her life and what she did to overcome loneliness. But in general, where does loneliness come from? She points out that some of us grew up in difficult or challenging households, and so we were lonely even though there were a lot of people there. She talks about technology creating a situation where a lot of us feel lonely even though social media and we're on Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp and text and everything else. Even though technology is there, we feel further apart from each other. And she also talks about the pandemic, how that forced a lot of us to be apart from each other, and that even added more to loneliness. So she discusses, the roots of loneliness. She talks about connection and the different kinds of connection that we can build with the people in our lives. She talks about the micro connections with just everyday people that we run into on a daily basis. She talks about self-connection, the connection we have with ourselves, and our building up our self-worth. She talks about intimate connection with the people that we're the most intimate with, relational connection, which is essentially family and neighbors and people we're not that we're somewhat close to. And then she also talks about a collective connection, which is essentially people that we have things in common with. We don't know very well, but we have similarities with them or things that are in common with them. So the entire book of Let's Talk About Loneliness is basically strategies on how to overcome loneliness. Every chapter is just filled with ideas and strategies and things that we might not have ever thought about. She talks about things like vulnerability, how by sharing more and by being there for other people and allowing other people into our lives, we can create stronger connections with them. She talks about making amends and forgiving people. And so if there are people in your life that you no longer talk to or that you had some issue with over the years, you can figure out a way to make amends with them and reconnect with them. She talks about the expat strategy. If you're an expat or if you see expats living around the world, they tend to have a lot of friends, but it's like, what is that mindset? When you move to a new country, you have to make a connection very quickly with a lot of people because you need to build your own tribe. And she shows you gives you some ideas on how to do that. She also talks about, this is a very lovely concept in the book, I'm going to call it the Robert Heng mentality, which is her dad who has a incredible way of creating connections with people that come to his store. So she just observes how he treats each person in a very unique way, communicates with each person in their own way of communicating, relates to each person in their own way. So it's just having great rapport with people. And she talks about how to have the Robert Heng mentality. And then at the very end of the book, she talks about the service mentality and how in the process of serving others or doing charity together or in your profession, helping other people, you find commonalities that way. You find common things with other people. You build rapport with other people while you're doing something good at the same time. So these are just some of the strategies. But like I said, if you have experienced loneliness, if you're feeling lonely, you feel like you need more friends, you feel like you need a stronger network, this is definitely the book. It's Let's Talk About Loneliness, but ultimately it's Let's Talk About Connection, let's talk about relationships, let's talk about love. Highly recommend it. Pick up Simone Heng's Let's Talk About Loneliness.